Welcome to Class 6 of Breadpoints Academy. Today we'll be talking about offline world of counterfeiting. We'll be looking at the problems associated with sourcing of raw materials and components through the process of manufacturing, distribution and retail, and how counterfeiting can be combated at each of those stages. We'll then take some time to lay out other brand protection strategies that don't involve the internet, including education, cooperation with other groups, and how technology can help you beat counterfeiters. Let's get started. The biggest driver of counterfeiting today is e-commerce and other online tools. The best way to combat this, as we mentioned in our previous class, is to use a technological online solution. However, this isn't to say that offline solutions don't still have their place in the fight against counterfeiting. And it's still important for brand protection specialists to understand how this underground industry works in the offline world. Counterfeits still have the same constraints as authentic products, in that they must be produced, shipped and sold as physical products, which leaves them vulnerable to real-world law enforcement. Level 1. Manufacturers. The problems are illegally sourced components used by counterfeiters to remain hidden. The wider black market is supported. How counterfeiters get a hold of IP from other brands. Let's start at the first point at which counterfeiting happens, the manufacture stage. Before counterfeiters even begin the process of producing their fakes, they need raw materials and components like nuts, bolts, metal and plastic sheets, and so on. Counterfeiters purchasing raw materials from legitimate sources might draw attention to their activities. So, in many cases, this also needs to be sourced illegally if counterfeiters wish their operations to remain underground. In extreme cases, this can mean working with cartels, running illegal mining operations. So, before a single counterfeiting is made, money is being funneled into cartels and other insidious groups. Supporting the wider black market is a huge negative effect of the counterfeiting trade. To find cheap labor, many counterfeiting groups work with human trafficking. People are smuggled across borders and are forced into slave labor to repay their traffickers. Examples of other crimes connected to counterfeiting are sadly all too common. It's important to remember all the effects of this illicit trade and the people who truly suffer from the actions of counterfeiters. The counterfeit manufacturing capital of the world is undoubtedly China. In illegal factories in the Far East, ranging from size of a living room to full centers of manufacture, around 3/4 of the world's replica products are created. There is a widespread problem currently concerning brands that elect to outsource the production to foreign countries. From inconsistencies between national legal systems surrounding IP, often comes the issue of secretive intellectual property being spread illegally. In fact, the source of infringed intellectual property is another significant method of counterfeit production, what's known as the third shift. For those who haven't heard this phrase before, the third shift refers to workers staying in a factory after it's officially closed for the day. There they keep working as they have done all day, and any products they make above their quota for the original brand is kept in secret to be sold in the black market. In recent years, the quality of counterfeit production has improved dramatically. The technologies used for making products is becoming more advanced and more accessible for even low-level counterfeits. This means counterfeiters are becoming steadily more proficient with the products they create, which makes it considerably harder to detect what is authentic and what is fake. Solutions. So what possible solutions to counterfeiting at the manufacturing level exist? Manufacturers filtering, identifying and isolating counterfeit components, reporting tools for everyone involved, manufacturers ensuring the employees are not illegally working overtime, no disclosure or NNN agreements. First off, it's the responsibility of manufacturers to prevent counterfeit components and illegally sourced raw materials from entering the production chain at their level. Clear and effective procedures should be established for workers and companies at the manufacture stage to be able to report counterfeit items. If counterfeits are found, then it should be easy for anyone to flag them and for the problem to be dealt with thoroughly, and ideally anonymously. These procedures must be available to multiple branches of the company, from factory workers who physically handle parts and raw materials, to customer service, who might be dealing with irritated consumers, to the managers and bosses. It's important to allow the presence of counterfeit to be reported to the relevant authorities. An effective plan to fight counterfeit products would not only have the counterfeit part returned to the supply chain, but would be able to quarantine and properly identify its authenticity. Simply returning a part to the supplier runs the risk that the product remains in the supply chain, and that the problem isn't dealt with in a meaningful way. If one counterfeit part is detected, there are bound to be others that haven't been spotted, so it's important to run investigations. Implementing authentication technology on the products being produced, as well as the packaging they are sold in, is a great way to prevent counterfeiting. If the rest of the supply chain, as well as the end consumers, have a way of quickly and simply verifying a product's authenticity, then it creates a huge extra hurdle for counterfeiters to be able to pass off their own products as legitimate. Finally, many companies might opt to outsource the manufacture, especially smaller and newer companies who don't yet have the capital to run their own manufacturing process. If this is the case, the manufacturer should not be chosen and trusted blindly. A rigorous vetting is an absolute must for any company in this situation. Once product designs are freely given to a new mini manufacturer, then they're out in the open permanently. To combat the issue of outsourced manufacturers misusing trade secrets shared from the original brand, non-disclosure agreements, or better yet, NNN agreements, must be used in contracts to ensure designs, blueprints, and any trade secrets are not illegally passed to outside the involved parties. Level 2. Distributors. The problems are distribution centers in parts of the world high in corruption, counterfeits mixed together with authentic products, border and customs officials overwhelmed by individual packages. Counterfeits can find their way into the supply chain through distributors. This most often occurs when the products are shipped through areas of the world with higher levels of corruption and low legal authority. For example, this can include shipping locations with strong mafia involvement, who have an interest in feeding counterfeits into the supply chain, or in countries where police bribery is a common facet of normal life, and counterfeits are able to quietly sneak across a border. Distributor-level introduction of counterfeits happens either with or without the knowledge and approval of the distribution company. Either way, it's particularly problematic because when counterfeit products are mixing with authentic ones, it becomes much more difficult to determine them as fake. They become legitimized, and the odds of catching them out drop significantly. A traditional solution to counterfeit distribution has been relying on border patrol and customs to undertake security and authenticity checks to find counterfeit products. However, in recent years, border officials have become overwhelmed by the volume of products, which have been increasing exponentially. This is caused by a noticeable change in the nature of shipping consumer products. Previously, huge shipping containers full of products were sent overseas to be split up upon arrival and sent out to retailers. Now, with the advent of e-commerce, many companies opt to package and send products directly to the end consumer. This means that instead of opening a shipping container and investigating the products inside, each product is wrapped individually. The amount of work it takes to check a shipping container entering a port increases enormously. So while border and customs officials continue to do great work, they need support. Solutions: cooperation and communication through the supply chain, brand education, tamper evident security labels. So, it isn't realistic to expect customs to catch every counterfeit product coming across borders, but their impact in brand protection is still important. The help they offer a company can certainly be enhanced with some education. Educate these groups about your product's key indicators of authenticity and about your trademarks and other registered intellectual property. This will go far in helping them to make more accurate judgments about the products they review as they come across a border. An effective plan is needed to uncover counterfeits suspected to be introduced to the supply chain by distributors. This would require a cooperation and communication from both retailers and manufacturers. The plan would be aimed at allowing and encouraging them to set common objectives to be able to communicate between teams and execute protocol-driven plans. In addition to the authentication technology that we mentioned in the manufacture stage, packaging can carry another layer of security, especially helpful at this stage. Tamper-evident security labels are a great way of limiting the activities of counterfeiters. Being able to see if packaging has been opened or manipulated in any way not only alerts the legitimate companies in the supply chain to the presence of counterfeits, but if checks are made carefully along the chain, then this can also narrow down the exact moment where counterfeits are being added. Level 3. Face-to-face vendors. Counterfeiting the street level, such as street vendors, illegal secret shops, counterfeits in legal shops. Selling counterfeits is considerably harder without the help of the internet, but it is still a widespread issue and one that has been around for a very long time. Counterfeiting at the retail or street level and in real world generally comes in 3 flavors. The first is likely the most famous vendors of counterfeit, Street sellers. These are most commonly found in touristy areas. Currently in European cities like Venice and Barcelona, this type of seller is often found as people on busy streets, laying out blankets covered in counterfeit items. Because their trade is both illegal and very visible, the blanket helps them quickly gather their things and run away when police arrive. Next, we have the secret shop. Numerous infamous hotspots full of these shops exist, including Canal Street in New York, Manchester's Bury New Road, and in Dubai, where tourists are known to be led from legitimate shops through hidden doors and secret passageways into a new, clandestine area of the shop, where they are presented with hundreds of counterfeit versions of luxury items for sale. And lastly, we come to counterfeits that are sold in legal shops. Through either wrongful actions of manufacturers, distributors, or shopkeepers themselves, counterfeit products can find themselves on the same shelves as authentic goods. Like with distributors, it's very possible that the people running these establishments are genuinely unaware that they are part of a counterfeiting operation. Legitimate businesses find it very difficult to operate when there is a place selling counterfeits down the street. Customers have often no problem with local counterfeit vendors, because it means they are getting high-end products or at least knockoff versions of them at massively discounted prices. So when consumers are faced with the choice between high prices and authenticity or cheap counterfeits, the real retailer tends to suffer. Solutions: cooperation with other brands and law enforcement, using private investigators, employing product awareness programs. So, what's the solution here? Remember, this is the final stage of the entire process, the final chance to stop counterfeits before they are presented to the end consumer. Police sweeps of notorious areas of counterfeiting are generally the most common form of policing for street sellers. Without communication between brands, police agencies can discover where some of the main hotspots for counterfeit sales are, but often don't have the experience or insight needed to tackle the problem comprehensively. So, this is an area where it's wise for brands to cooperate with law enforcement as much as possible. Educating police about your brand, like with the border officials, can greatly improve how well police are able to combat counterfeits being sold offline to customers. This is especially true about local police, who can have much greater direct effect than law enforcement at the federal or national level. Hiring an investigation firm to uncover counterfeiting operations can really help to get the ball rolling. Investigations can be very time-consuming and expensive, so they're often not seen as a priority for the police. But if you can launch your own investigations, which are then passed on to the police, when enough evidence is gathered, then the entire process of law enforcement becomes much more effective. Finally, educate your retailers with product awareness programs. This will help them know exactly the product they are selling and how to know if it's a counterfeit. The procedures we talked about previously in the manufacture stage of supply should also be applied at retail end of the supply chain. It's no good being able to spot a counterfeit if the people working at the retail end have no idea who to report the problem to.
General solutions. So now we have looked at the 3 stages of counterfeiting and how to solve issues specific to each stage. It's time to look at offline solutions to counterfeiting in general. Firstly, registering IP as your first step in protection. Secondly, how to identify fakes of your products. Then, why educating your consumer base is important. And finally, overall industry cooperation. IP registration. Of course, the first step to protecting intellectual property, both offline and online, should be to ensure it's all correctly registered. If this isn't done, then protecting IP is always going to be an extremely uphill battle. In a future class, we will go over the process of building an IP portfolio, so stay tuned for updates. For now, let's look at some other steps you can take to fight offline counterfeiting. Population awareness. The third group of people who is worth educating about your product are your customers. While many shoppers do indeed go looking specifically for counterfeit products, the other half are people who are unfortunately duped into buying fakes. There is education that can be given to both groups. The first group, the counterfeit seekers, can be taught about the criminality of counterfeiting. Many people don't know that selling counterfeit is a crime, and that purchasing one on holiday and then getting on a plane could even get you in trouble with law enforcement. They can even be educated about the wider harms that the counterfeiting industry causes for the world, like the health risk and how counterfeiting supports organized crime. The second group of people, those we call the silent sufferers, are those who purchase counterfeits unwittingly. The best thing to teach this group would be similar to what you've been teaching to the Border Patrol and the police. Basically, if they see your products in the street or in a shop, then how they can assure themselves what is a real product. What are the indicators that mark a product as genuine, and what are the telltale signs of a counterfeit? This part of your education will need to be more far-reaching and general than with law enforcement. So instead of conversations and seminars, try creating some videos, articles, or even infographics of the topic. Utilizing this well can turn into a customer base that's very well educated about your products. Industry cooperation. Counterfeiting is a very well organized and widespread problem in today's world. The ideal countermeasure to this involves a lot of cooperation, not just between companies and customers and law enforcement, but between companies across all industries under threat. Collaborating with other companies in your sector is the final piece of advice we will offer today. A great example of this is the AACA, the Alibaba Anti-Counterfeiting Alliance. Over 100 brands are represented in the cross-company organization that is dedicated to sharing strategies and information related to anti-counterfeiting, working together on investigation and so on. Plenty of cooperative organizations like this already exist. If they don't, then consider making a few calls to similar companies and seeing who else would be interested in collaborating with you. It really is a win-win situation, and a great idea for brands to be a part of them if they have any interest in working against counterfeits.
And finally, we reached the end of Class 6. This has been a big topic to cover, so let's quickly review the key points for brands to take away. Brands can educate their consumers on how to identify fakes, and why it's important not to support counterfeiters. Make sure there are systems for employees at all levels and all stages of production to be able to report potential fakes, and ensure they're able to spot fakes. Cooperate with local police and customs officials so they can be your first line of defense. Consider collaborating with other brands in your industry. You might be competitors, but you are on the same side against counterfeiters. So there you have it. We'll see you next time for Class 7. Goodbye for now.